goals in life? Anybody? Raise your hand. Everybody should have a goal or a dream in life. If you don't, find one. Now, my next question is, what are you doing to achieve that goal, to achieve that dream? Is anybody doing anything, working toward it? Training?
Awesome.
Training is a good start. You're talking to somebody that dropped out of school right here, that never did good in school. They got D's and F's. I think I might have got an A in PE. They dropped out of high school, couldn't read or write, went to federal prison, forced to get educated. Then I wanted to get educated because in prison you have to get your GED. You have to go to school. It's mandatory. But when I was there, I wanted to learn. Years later, I got arrested in 1995. Years later, I got a book that was published, award-winning author. I write movie scripts now, working in the movie production, celebrity chauffeur. This is when you do the right thing and you set your mind to something and you work toward it little by little. And when I came home from prison, I had nothing. I was sleeping on the couch in my mom's house. Something to think about. Day by day, there's 24 hours in a day. 24 hours. Use those 24 hours wisely because you're not going to get them back the next day. It's a whole different day. It's a whole new 24 hours. You guys are young, you got your whole life ahead of you. Matter of fact, I'm just signing up to go to the community college over there for Cheyenne Film School. Matter of fact, I was talking to a counselor today. 48 years old, going back to college. You guys ain't even there yet. You still have your whole life ahead of you. Think about it. Our next speaker is Colette. She's 41 years old and has served a total of 2 years in custody, which includes 1 year in federal custody and 1 year in state custody. Her purpose for joining Real Talk is to give back to the community and fulfill her passion to work with youth. She wishes to plant a seed in every youth that she wishes to plant a seed in every youth she speaks to in hopes that they will develop and nurture the seed as they become adults. Give a warm welcome to Colette.
Hi guys, my name is Colette. Ooh, it works really good when you're up here. How many know the difference between a felony and a misdemeanor? Raise your hands. The bottom line for me, the difference between felony and misdemeanor is the amount of money your crime was for. I was out there doing felony crimes for misdemeanor money. That's how it ended up. I was getting in trouble for felony after felony after felony. And it was for misdemeanor money. I wasn't making thousands of dollars and hundreds of thousands of dollars, but I was adding up points on my record. And the first couple times they worked it out with me. They dropped it down and said, okay, we're just gonna give you misdemeanor time. And I went to jail, and I went to jail, and I went to jail. I went to drug court. I went to different programs. And finally, they gave me a felony crime. I did a felony crime. I got felony time for it. And I went to federal prison. And I went to state prison too. And for 32 days, I was locked down in state prison. And I couldn't get out but 20 minutes a week. And you had to make your phone calls, or twice a week for 20 minutes. You had to make all your phone calls and take a shower in that time. The rest of the time, we were 24-hour lockdown with one other person in our cell for 32 days. It wasn't fun. It wasn't fun. So I'll back up a little bit and tell you I was born in Las Vegas, and I went to private school. My mom just retired from the courthouse after 33 years of working for the courthouse, and my dad smoked weed. And I was embarrassed about it. I didn't think it was cool. I didn't think other people's parents were smoking weed. I didn't want anyone to come over to my house because I think they would smell my dad smoking weed. So I didn't have a lot of friends because I didn't go to public school, so it wasn't like I lived by my school and I walked to school with my friends. It wasn't like that. I had to be driven across town, and I hated it. I hated that I didn't have friends on my block, even though there was kids that lived across the street from me. And I was an only kid, and I always hung out with the adults, and I always did adult things. I wanted to be cool. That's all I wanted to do. And so one day my dad told me, you need to go have some friends. Go outside and don't come in until you have some friends. So I went outside and I sat on my neighbor's wall and I waited till these kids felt sorry for me. They came over and they talked to me and I said, what's your name? And I still remember their names were Renee and Michael Baca. And I said, okay, that's all I need. I needed your names. We're friends now. End of story. And I walked back in my house because I didn't know how to play with other kids. I always hung out with the adults at my house that came to smoke weed with my dad. And my dad said, why are you back in the house? I said, because I have friends now. And he said, who are your friends? I said, Michael and Renee. Those are my friends. And they ended up really becoming my friends, and we hung out sometimes, and nobody ever came in my house because my dad was always smoking weed. And back then, it was 40, 30 years ago, and it wasn't as accepted as it is now. Everybody's like, oh, weed's legal, this is legal, that's legal. Back then, it wasn't cool, and I was embarrassed and ashamed. And I gotta be honest, I wasn't a superstar athlete. I wasn't out there. I tried to play basketball. It was a joke. I mean, there was no reason for me to be in there. I was not a superstar. I tried to play volleyball. It was a joke. I was not a superstar. I'll tell you what I was, though. I was super smart. And I would be in all these honor classes. I was in private school. My parents paid. And because my dad was off and on work all the time, because of his drug addiction, my mom had to make ends meet for us. And they definitely wanted me to get a higher education because my mom worked at the courthouse and she heard what people were going through every day. And so I wasn't always in honors classes, and I didn't feel like I fit in there either. I could get good grades if I studied. I wanted to be lazy. I just wanted to go to school and go home. That's it. I didn't want to get good grades. But I did want to play music, but we couldn't afford it. We could barely afford for me to go to school. So I'll tell you when I learned to play music when I was in federal prison. That's how I learned to play music. So how many of you guys know that you can play sports or how many of you think this is a punishment? Raise your hand. Real talk. Okay. How many of you want to play sports or play music or dance or rap or anything like that? How many of you know that Real Talk will pay that every month for you to go and participate in that? So Real Talk's program is they require you to come for 3 months. It's a 3-month-long program. If you come every month, once a month, for 3 hours, they'll pay up to $150 of your choice to sports, to music, to rapping, to BMXing, to anything your heart desires. Ray asked you if you want to do anything in particular. I wanted to learn how to play music, and I never thought we could afford it. Now I learned how to play music. You don't have to wait and go to federal prison and enjoy the nicer part of prison. Federal prison was better than state prison. How many of you have grandmas? Everybody have grandmas? My grandma died when I was in federal prison. My favorite grandma that I grew up with, that I hung out with, my favorite person in the whole world, she died while I was in federal prison. And they could have paid $2,500 for me to come to Pahrump. I was in holding to Vegas, and I could have went to my grandma's funeral in Shackles, but I didn't want to do that. I was embarrassed. I didn't want my family to know that I was in jail, even though I was on Crime Stoppers, on News 3 Crime Stoppers. That's where I ended up at, doing felony crimes for misdemeanor money, over and over again. So how many of you have people in your family that get talked about because they're in trouble all the time, they're in jail all the time? Okay, I ended up being that person. It's embarrassing. I went to my aunt's funeral this weekend and I was embarrassed to go in because I didn't know if people were going to judge me for being in jail, and judge me for making mistakes, and judge me for being, I'm a recovering drug addict. I did drugs. I hated my dad for doing drugs, and then I did drugs. I went to private school. I went to Bishop Gorman. And I graduated. And I had the opportunity to go to college. I went to college. And then I got a career in insurance. I was an insurance agent, and I used to sell insurance for casinos. And then I got in a really bad relationship, and I started getting abused, and I started being a physical abuser back, and I started using drugs, and I used meth for many, many years. And I got my life back together. I went through drug court, and just like you guys go through different programs, I completed the program, and I felt like I deserved a reward for doing that, so I got high again, and I partied again, and I got in bad relationships again. And I finally ended up in prison. They'll wait for you. They'll wait. My number was 492-13048, federal prison, inmate ID number. They didn't say my first name. They didn't care my first name. They didn't want to know my first name. The people that were with me didn't know my first name. They knew my last name or my ID number. When I got off the bus, they asked you your number. They didn't care who you were besides that. You don't have to be that person. You can. They took old people. They took people with no legs. They took people who died while they were in custody. They took young people, 17 years old. They take everybody. They got room for you. They make room for you. They'll let you sit in a hole for 32 days until they got a spot for you, and they'll move you over there. You sit there like a caged animal, like when you go to the vets or to the animals that I made over and over. Today, I refuse to do that. I refuse to do that. I know people who died in their addiction. Last week at my office, a guy came in, he brought his doctor's excuse. He said I was sick over the weekend. He overdosed over the weekend. I got a call when I was in California that said they don't think he's going to make it. And he showed up to work on Tuesday. I said, where were you Monday? He said, I was in the doctor's office. He overdosed. He was in the hospital. The next day, he didn't come to work again. Yesterday, he called and said, I have a doctor's excuse. He overdosed again. Every time he overdoses, he could die. That's the bottom line. So if you guys want to do drugs or try to fit in or try to do whatever to make yourself fit in, you can do that. The choice is yours. And you can also deal with the consequences. There's always consequences for what we do. There's going to be good consequences and bad consequences. It's really your choice. What can you deal with? I learned that I could deal with being caged like an animal for 32 days, and I never want to experience that again. That's the bottom line. I go to college. I've been out of prison for 1 year. I have $10,000 sitting at my house that I've saved, legitly. I didn't have to do a felony crime. I didn't have to do a misdemeanor crime. I go to school 3 nights a week. I volunteer here. I work a full-time job. And I go to Narcotics Anonymous meetings because I'm a drug addict who needs help. Period. That's my story. I barely get to see my kids. I saw my oldest daughter when I first got out. When I walked in the room, she turned around and walked out. She's disgusted by me. She doesn't even give me the time of day to tell her I'm sorry. And I am. I am. Somebody asked me, when you held your baby in your arms, did you think you were going to leave him and never see him again? Nope. I never thought I was going to be that person who wasn't around, that was on food stamps, that was on Medicaid, that didn't have money to pay for her kid to have shoes. I just wanted my kids to have nice things. And because I wanted those nice things, I started doing felony crimes for misdemeanor money. And at the end of the day, I didn't have any of that money, I didn't have any of those things, and I didn't have any of my kids. So it's really your choice today if you want to continue down the path where you're getting in trouble. If you haven't gotten in trouble, take advantage of the program. They will pay up to $150 a month. That doesn't sound like a lot, but that's going to keep you going in sports for the whole year. If it wasn't a lot, then you'd be doing it right now. Take advantage of the opportunities that are given to you freely just for showing up. For you being here for 3 hours a night, you're getting $150. That's $50 an hour. That's your choice. If you want to take that choice today, if you want to learn how to play music, if you want to be into sports, if you want to take something that's advanced, who cares if your friends are doing it? Be the one to show them how cool your ideas are. You don't have to follow other people's ideas. You can go ahead and step out on your own. And if you need a support group, Real Talk's here to show you how to do those things. That's all I got.